Welcome to episode number 3 of the Secret to Immortality podcast, where we discuss how to be joyous, happy, free, and physically immortal in this life. In this episode, we'll discuss Qi Gong for lasting life, an ancient Chinese healing art for strength, recovery, and physical immortality that you can do. I'm John Harrigan, author, Qigong master, and founder of the website immortalnow.com. That's immortalnow.com. In last week's podcast, we reviewed the threefold process of the secret to immortality. 1, mindfulness for immortality. 2, Qigong for lasting life. And 3, immortality coaching. We then took a deep dive into part 1, mindfulness for immortality, discussing what it is, how, and why it works. This week, we'll cover part 2 of the secret to immortality, Qigong for lasting life. But first, let's quickly review the threefold process of the secret to immortality. 1, mindfulness for immortality is where we learn to harness the power of our thoughts, words, and actions to create the life we want, of eternal physicality. 2, Qigong for lasting life is an ancient Chinese healing art we'll discuss at length in today's podcast. 3, immortality coaching is where we work with an expert farther upon the path to energize, strengthen, and empower our own immortality development. In the next podcast, after this one, we'll dive deep into immortality coaching, how and why it can be a powerful assist in your immortality work. The earliest records of Qigong go back thousands of years, and perhaps even before this time. Qigong is the original martial art from which all other forms evolved and developed. You may have heard of Tai Chi. Tai Chi is often described as 50% Qigong and 50% exercise. Qigong does have a fighting and self-defense aspect. However, its other more powerful and important part is Qigong for healing, personal development, and physical immortality. In the early days of Qigong, it was used as a martial art for soldiers in battle. Healing or medical Qigong probably developed as surviving but injured fighters returned from battle. There were physical and psychological traumas from battle that needed to heal. Qigong was the solution. Today, medical Qigong is what I describe as the third pillar of Chinese traditional medicine, where acupuncture and medicinal herbs are the other 2 pillars. My own very positive experience with medical Qigong began in my adult years as a consequence of an injury that happened to me when I was 15. Let me explain. From an early age, I was a seeker, a spiritual seeker perhaps. I wanted to know what life was all about, the truth to life. I felt I had lived about maybe 1,500 years. And I remember when I was about 6 years of age looking in a mirror, and I could simply see all the lifetimes that I have lived. At one moment, it was kind of interesting. At the time, it was the most natural experience you could possibly have. I was looking into my past lives, at my past lives, all at once. I could see them all at once, all the lives as they had happened from beginning to end, and what I had got from them. And the fact is, all these lives were interesting, deep, and full. I was poor, I was wealthy, I was mostly in between, happy, sad, disabled, and gifted. All of these lifetimes, during all of them, I never really looked for, discovered, and found the secret to life. Why are we alive? What underlies reality? And when I was born into this life, I had an incredible motivation, plan, and impetus to discover this secret, to do something good, give it to the world, to understand what life was all about. Even at that young age, I could see that however well-meaning, successful, and good the adults around me were, and there were a lot of adults around me in a good neighborhood, I could see that none of them really knew the secret to life, why we were here, what was really possible, what the full potential of human living was. So I progressed with this impetus, with this motivation, with this sense of life purpose. I wanted to know the secret. I wanted to be all a human could possibly be. Not just me, I wanted humanity to be the best that it could be. I was fortunate enough to have a good father who provided security, intelligence, and a creative mind, and a mother that was also a spiritual seeker. She read a lot of good books, metaphysical books, books on Eastern religion, metaphysical Christianity, anything you could imagine about spiritual and personal growth. At a young age, she shared these books with me. We would discuss them together as I read them, and I was very eager and very interested in what she shared and discussed with me. When I was about the age of 12, my mother got a record on meditation. This was before any recorded thing was possible beyond a record. And one day I put that record on and I started going through a meditative process, learning meditation. Immediately, it was powerful for me, and I started practicing every day. Also, my mother was heavily into yoga, hatha yoga, and other forms of yoga that she practiced. With this in mind, personal development, spiritual development, was of major importance to me as I lived my life. As I got into my early teen years, I started reading more and more books, practicing meditation, and when I was about 15, I started to hear about LSD, a hallucinogenic, and this was being used by medical doctors. It was also extolled by PhD psychologists from Harvard University. And I thought, wow, well, this might be an answer. I'd read that you could experience God on this. Even though I did experience the presence of God, usually in my life, I thought maybe this would give me a greater spiritual experience. Maybe this would accelerate my development, because this is exactly, as a young teen, this is exactly what I was reading in the major press of America. Sadly, I didn't take note that what it said in the major press was also that it could destroy your mind. And I had no earthly idea what that meant. Destroy your mind. What did that mean? Well, I was very athletic, very involved in competitive swimming, diving, football, and tennis. So I thought, well, what's important to me is my ability to do sports. And I really didn't understand at that young age what the warning was. And it was a wise and strong warning to everyone, I would say. So I got a little bit of this, it was a street drug. You never know exactly what you're buying, but the young man who sold it to me said it was LSD, and I tried it, and it was nothing really special. It was certainly a hallucinogenic, kind of a toxic neurological experience that was somewhat interesting. I didn't think I could really see God on it, but I thought I'd give it another try. I didn't think it was going to progress my spiritual development, but I thought I'd give it another try. So I bought some more, and then when I saw the young man at school sold it to me, he said, "John, did you have any problems with what I sold to you?" And I said, "Yes, I certainly did." And he said, "Well, I think there was too much strychnine and methamphetamine in that LSD." And I just, at the age of 15, I just said, wow, how and why is that possible? He explained to me that, sometimes these people that make these things at home mix other things with it to give it some type of effect. But the experience that I had with that street drug was a very bad one. It was a terrifically horrible experience. It did really harsh and permanent damage to my nervous system. The experience left me with severe anxiety, a type of PTSD, where if I wasn't back in the experience where, a rose bush came alive, ripped my skin off. It was painful, horrible. Mind you, I'm tripping on the strychnine pain at the same time, but my skin was ripped off. Bats descended on me and ripped off and ate my muscle. Then worms and insects came up through the ground, etc., etc. It was a terrifying experience, traumatized me deeply, damaged my nervous system. I came down from that drug experience, but I was left with extraordinary anxiety and really very severe PTSD. What my life was like day after day was just terror. I was afraid of being alive in the world. I didn't know what element, just a bird, a beautiful little bird chirping and flying by would trigger me back into the terror and the anxiety of the experience. Can't really tell you exactly what that fear and awful experience was. I hope you never have anything close to it. But it left me with a really bad situation. The next day, I was down from the experience, down from the so-called trip, but as I got outside and heard the birds and the crickets chirping, quickly I could feel this agony rush through my entire nervous system, and I could see and feel how badly my nerves and brain had been damaged from this experience. So I stumbled and fell, metaphorically speaking, day by day after this horrible and damaging experience. I tried to share it with people. I tried to find some help, some hope, but at the time, medically speaking, my accident, my problem, which is commonplace today, sadly, at that time, doctors hadn't heard of it and didn't know how to treat it and how to deal with it. It just got worse and worse by day. I was terrified and incredibly anxious all day long, in agony and pain. I'm not sure how I lived with it, but an incredible thing happened. At the end of about a year, when I was 16, after living about a year with this, I was in bed at night, and that was really the most horrible time. There are no distractions, and you're just stuck with who and what you've done to yourself. And after about a year, I knew I really couldn't live any longer with it. It's like sitting on a hot burner. Everyone is going to jump off or find a way to end the experience at some point. So literally from the desperation of my soul, from really a place I never even knew existed beforehand, in that desperate moment, a year after that injury, I said a prayer, and I remember exactly what it was. I said a prayer, God, do something. God, do something, or I'm cashing in my chips. And the moment I made that prayer, something beautiful happened. I didn't leave my body, but I was simply with a pure and beautiful higher power. To me, I would call it God. To you, it can be nirvana. It can be your own description. But I was next to literally my creator in my body on earth. And next to my creator, I was just as this creator was, as his son, say, and as all of us are children of an incredible higher power. And this higher power really had all the power, all the knowledge, all the bliss, wisdom, and love in the universe. And I shared that with him. He was a separate individual from me. I was a separate individual, John Harrigan. But when we were together, there was no division in the beauty of this powerful, powerful love. And when I was with this being that I'll call my father, that was my father in that experience, when I was with this father of who I am, the origin of me, I was exactly who I am. I was more who I was, more fully than here on earth. It was more real than any moment, second, or day on this planet had ever been. I was fully myself, and in this place, in this really heaven or nirvana, there was no time or space. There was only the immortal now. And that's why I named my website immortalnow.com. There was only the immortal now, perfect bliss, unity, oneness, and belonging. I have no idea how long I was in this place, because remember, in this place, there was no time. I could have been an infinite amount of time. or it could have been a fraction of a second. But eventually, I started to focus back into the present, where I was, in my body, in my bed, in my bedroom, after that prayer. Eventually, from this beautiful nirvana, this bliss and wonderful place, this God presence, my Father, my origin, I focused back into the world. And as I focused back into my body, into my room, all the God consciousness, all the power, all the love, all the being of this heaven experience came back with me. It flowed through my body, my mind, my every cell of my being. And everything I thought of on earth, this unending, passionate, compassionate power of love flowed to. And at the time, one of my sisters was having some problems. There were other problems in the world and in my life. And as I thought of them, all this God energy, God consciousness, God being flowed through my own being as my own self and into the world. And I thought, wow, well, this is probably what Jesus Christ and other saints and Buddha and whomever, just all the famous people we can write about, well-known people and lesser known, I'm sure this was their experience. I'm sure this is what they were trying to share, that this was the true human being. This was the secret to life, the secret to being alive that should be no secret at all. I understood that this full love, this full presence of love, of compassion, of God being, of God's self, I understood that this is who we are, this is what we were all meant to be. As I was having this experience, I noticed that I was about 1/3 healed. You know, I had that horrible injured condition. It really was tragic, and I couldn't live with it. And I could feel and see that in my body, back to fully who I was on earth as a 16-year-old boy, I could feel and see that I was healed about 1/3. And I instantly understood, okay, this is my life mission. My life mission is to slowly, with this higher power, learn how to heal the other 2/3 of myself. And in that healing process, I would become this fully empowered man, fully spiritual man, nothing special, just simply who we all really are. And I realized this work, this becoming well alive and able, would probably take a few decades, and it did, of struggle, work, hardship, and success. I knew it would probably take a few decades. I could see the future in front of me. And I knew that eventually I would be ready to teach this experience, to teach this reality to everyone on Earth, to the masses across the planet, so that everyone understood their full potential and everyone understood the possibility of human development. I wouldn't even call it possibility. It's just how we're designed to be. Joyous, happy, free, and physically immortal, with no suffering, death, and hardship. Yes, people, we can learn through suffering, death, and hardship, but I think the best lesson, in my mind, after 1,500 incarnations, the best lesson I've learned is there is no lesson other than to be fully who we are, fully joyful, fully blissful, fully well, fully happy, physically immortal in an immortal physicality. You might say, well, that is just ridiculous, impossible. Look at the horrible world. Yeah, and who made the world as it is? I would suggest life itself, the decisions made by forms of life that decided to kill and take other forms of life, warped creation and made a pretty horrendous situation in place to live for everything and everyone. And my message in The Secret to Immortality, especially in Mindfulness for Immortality, is that we can change all of that pretty quickly. We can change all of it as unmasked together, individually and across the planet. We simply become aware of this possibility. We simply become aware of who we are, what our development is. With this injury, this bad injury to my nervous system, yes, I was healed in that miracle moment about 30%, but really I kind of stumbled and fell through the rest of my life, just wounded and not fully able to live to understand. Now, this wounded condition really motivated me to get some help. I had some great spiritual experiences of development with organizations and practices, but the most powerful thing that happened to me, I was in Seattle in my early 40s, and for the first time, as I told you, this condition, I was healed, but it also just didn't get that much better. In Seattle, I started for the first time to have panic attacks, and I want to I'll tell you, if you've never had any, they're just like bad hallucinogenic trips. I started to have bad panic attacks, one after another, driving my car through Seattle, and I just thought, wow, I don't think I can get through my daily life and take care of myself with these panic attacks. So I had had a good experience a few years earlier in a clinic for traditional Chinese medicine in Florida for my condition, and that helped me quite a bit. And they said, well, John, you need to come to our weekend Qi Gong class. And I thought, oh, well, I don't know what Qi Gong is. I'm not going to go to that, blah, 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 because this has maybe helped me enough. But it didn't really. So I just one day, desperate, sitting down at lunch, saw in a newspaper at the time a small advertisement for a traditional Chinese physician in the university district in Seattle. So I made an appointment and went to him, and just a very humble, nothing. You couldn't tell by looking at this humble physician that he was this mighty powerhouse. And I got an acupuncture treatment from him that really helped, and medicinal herbs from China. And these were real herbs from China that some of them take 200 years of continual growth, even to become ready as medicinal herbs to treat people. So I got some very powerful herbs from this man. I later found out, he's from Beijing, China. I later found out that he is in Tibet, considered to be the reincarnation of the healing medicine Buddha, a pretty big deal from that area of the country. And he was discovered by lamas from Tibet in Beijing when he was about 6, trained and cared for by them periodically in China, as I kind of understand it a little bit. And then when he was 12 or 13, he met and trained with Taoist immortals in some mountains of China, and this is where he really learned the specific form of Qi Gong for immortality, for health, for recovery, but specifically for immortality that I label and call Qi Gong for lasting life. My teacher, a grandmaster, a Qi Gong grandmaster and traditional Chinese physician from China, taught me, and I still work with him from a distance, but I've been at this 23 years, studying and practicing with this grandmaster in Qigong from Beijing. And many years ago, I've been at this about 23 years, many years ago, I became a Qigong master. And I teach you that Qigong that I'm taught and that I practice every day, throughout the day, pretty much now as a natural way of responding to life in the world. So even after that wonderful healing of my teenage years, it literally saved my life. I could not possibly have continued to live in that horrible condition if I hadn't been healed that 1/3 that I shared with you. But I kind of stumbled and fell through the following years, and that was okay. Because in that continued hardship, it motivated and focused me on my mission and helped me pursue what I needed to fully express that nirvana, that God, that wonderful love in human form that we all are. And eventually, as I shared, in my early 40s, I was living in Seattle, Washington, and I started to have terrible anxiety attacks. And I found almost instant healing from this traditional physician, this Qigong Grand Master who had studied with Taoist immortals in the mountains of Wudong. I received almost immediate help from the acupuncture and tea, but he said, John, far more powerful is Qigong. And it's spelled Qigong. You would think, why not something like Chee? But powers that be and associations in America have insisted it's spelled Qigong. He said, John, for powerful and long-lasting recovery of this difficult health condition, acupuncture and herbs simply aren't near enough. Qigong is what's required. And he had a weekend Qigong class unbelievably priced at about $12. You can still go Saturday in Seattle. He's still teaching it about 2 hours for $12. And I went and immediately just started practicing the Qi Gong that he taught, and immediately it affected me. And I bought one of his tapes and I watched it and I practiced with him morning and night, and more, better and better results. It really was the thing. But the most powerful and important thing is my early mission was immortality. I met a woman, an American master, working on her own physical immortality when I was also about 15 or 16, in that difficult time of my life. She called it translation. And from her, I would say, I got something, a knowledge and awareness. There was something passed on to me of immortality. And I knew when I had that miraculous healing with that, in that nirvana, that heaven, with that higher power consciousness that healed me about a third, that experience happened about the same time as working with that American master, working on her own immortality consciousness, her own immortality process she called translation, translating the mortal body, the body that suffers, gets sick and dies, translating that mortal body into the immortal body, which I would say the real human body that's already here and ready to live, the real human body without suffering, death, and hardship. Both of these happened at about the same time. The miraculous healing with that God consciousness, that higher power consciousness, and meeting this woman working on her own immortality process. So when I met this Qigong Grandmaster that helped me so much in Seattle, Washington, and he's teaching these exercises, and more than half of them have the word immortality in them, and I'm understanding, these exercises, these Qigong exercises that I'm learning are for wellness and physical recovery of problems and personal development. But they're also, as my teacher would quietly explain, that most people I don't think really heard, they're for developing physical immortality, our full potential. And I remember one day, my teacher is still taught by Taoist immortals in the mountains of China, and he would go back periodically through the years when they were all silently called together, a group of them, to meet the immortals in the mountains. And he would come back and he mentioned that his teacher there was 189 years old. And I don't think anybody really heard the 100 part, and they just thought, oh, he has a pretty old teacher up there. And then after one trip, he came back and he was pretty sad. And we asked him what happened. And he said his teacher was gone. And we said, well, the 189-year-old. And we said, well, did he die? And he said, no. He just went poof. And I would say we're all able to have a wonderful, glorious life of health, happiness, wellness, physical immortality, to do whatever we want, perhaps. We can go poof or not poof. By the way, my teacher, after he recovered from his sadness, he, of course, had another immortal in the mountains. But he brought all this energy, all this spectacular ability and power, my Qigong teacher in Seattle, with him. And to be honest, I don't know if many or any students really noticed what he was actually teaching, but he was very out front about it. The good thing is I knew my mission was physical immortality, to teach that immortality consciousness, as I'm doing now, this moment, to you, and as I'm doing with my website, immortalnow.com. I knew that was my mission in my teens. I knew that was my mission in my early 40s, but I thought, how do I get from a place of having multiple panic attacks in a car driving through Seattle to being able to teach immortality to the masses as I'm doing today? And when I started to interact with this Qigong Grandmaster from China, I could feel his physical immortality. It's a presence, it's a power. And it's not just, superpower, super presence. There is a very palpable immortality to it. And it was affecting me, and as I spent my time with him, as doing those exercises, and as I have done over the years, even after moving away from Seattle, I still connect with this teacher. I still mentally pause and join his Saturday class as he teaches it. And I still participate with the immortals in the mountains of China, transforming my life, myself, my body to the best of our ability, and giving you all this information and this teaching. So that's Qi Gong, Qigong, Qi Gong, which is the second part of the threefold Secret to Immortality that I teach. The first part, and you can find this on the second podcast, the one before this, there are three parts to the Secret to Immortality. 1, mindfulness for immortality. 2, Qigong for lasting life. And 3, immortality coaching. Qigong for lasting life is what I'm talking about in this podcast. And you can start immediately. Go to my website, and I'll put a link to the part of my website underneath this article. I'll have an article underneath this podcast. Go to my website to do Qigong immediately, or simply to explore it and read more about it. Go to my website, and on the link at the top of the page in the menus, you'll find Qigong videos. Go to that page, read a little bit more about Qigong, and start immediately practicing 5-organ breathing. Now, this exercise will eventually be a $97 course as I talk about it and teach it, but right now, just go to it and at least watch it. You don't even have to do the actual exercise. You can just watch me go through it, and it will affect you. If you're having a hard time sleeping at night, just do the very first part of the exercise and see if it will help you go to sleep. Qi Gong, the secret to immortality. Qi Gong, the secret to immortality is 3 steps. 1, mindfulness for immortality. 2, Qigong for lasting life. And 3, immortality coaching, where you work with me or some other person at an advanced stage in their own immortality work to be positively influenced and to have a customized program that works for you. Immortality coaching. I've found it really important to work with other people farther upon the path. That is all today. Be joyous, happy, free, and physically immortal, and stay tuned for next week's podcast. Bless you all.